Hey, what's up, Liron here, and in this video I'm going to show you how to paint the small, fine, tiny, realistic details, okay? So we're going to look at this Mercedes logo. Actually, in my journey of looking for references for you to paint, I encountered this one and I thought to myself, what will be a better example of this concept of accurate small details than this, where you really have to follow the shapes of the light and shadow and get that realistic effect going. So I hope you're going to enjoy this one. Let's take it to the table. I'm going to explain exactly how I do this. Okay, so first off, this entire video is runs at double speed because it's a very slow process. But what I do want you to take from this is the importance of all of the small shapes, okay? Especially with these very chromatic, shiny, smooth, reflective surfaces. What really matters is getting all of those weird, strange shapes of light and dark. And as always in watercolor, we're going to get the light by leaving it behind, and we're going to get the dark by painting it in. So here's the thing. We have the challenge of the background to tackle. Now, very often you would approach this maybe by using masking fluid. For me, I wanted to avoid that. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to be really careful with the background later on. First, I devote my entire concern to the actual logo, the actual symbol. And look at what I'm doing. I'm simply rendering those shadows that I'm seeing. I'm painting them as I see them. Now, I did skip the drawing stage, and I will have in the description box below both the reference photo and the sketch, a bit of a higher quality picture of the sketch itself, so you can recreate it if you want to. The sketch isn't as important. I actually traced this one because I didn't want to deal with all the complex perspective, so you can feel free to do the same. The point here is those weird shapes we see, and they shouldn't make sense. Look at the shapes I'm putting in right now. They don't necessarily make sense, but that's what they appear to be in the reference photo, and that's what you want to recreate. Ideally, you want to understand why light and shadow functions the way it does, but sometimes it's borderline impossible. You have some very heavy effects of reflected light and different environmental light sources, and you see the object in the reflections of the other part of the object. So I say drop all of that and simply paint it as you see it, which means wherever you see a dark area, you put in the dark. Wherever you see the lighter areas, you put in the light. And wherever you want it to stay white, whatever you decide to leave as the lightest version, you keep it like that. If you look at the reference photo, the white sections actually aren't fully white. All of this image is a little grayed, so you get the lightest value to be gray, but I decided to leave it white because it's easier. I think it looks good. There's no need to minimize the value range, okay? So I'm gonna do the full thing from a really dark black to white, okay? And besides that, there isn't really much to say. You just paint those shapes you see in, but that's the important part. If you can detach from the way you imagine things in mind, just see all of these bunch of abundant abstract shapes, you'll do really well. Okay, the part that's easier to understand is actually at the center of the triangular section of the logo. There you can tell why the light is occurring and showing up in different places, but the rest of it it's so complex. It's essentially what you see is the different planes of the object. So the base here for the logo has this jagged shape, kind of like a cogwheel, and what you see is essentially the change of planes. So the top plane is white, the diagonal middle plane is black, and then underneath it there's a reflection on the body of the car itself, which is really fascinating. Once you look at these things for a while, they appear even more and more interesting. So I love these shapes. I love this exercise for if you feel like you're struggling too much with, I guess, painting things just as they appear to be. This is a good one because you clearly see the different shapes of light and shadow, and more importantly, they resemble more of abstract shapes than if you were to paint a portrait, for example. If you were to paint a person's face, that's really hard. Now, one more thing I love about these kinds of paintings is notice how you can really work section by section. If you're nervous about getting a large even wash, or your work is based on unifying and connecting together a lot of shapes, here you're not as obliged, or you don't feel the need necessarily to merge in
that many shapes, okay? I do merge them whenever I can. So for example, this shadow, this reflection, sorry, of the symbol on the body of the car, I'm going to put in somewhat connected in some areas at least to the base, to what casts the shadow. But I don't care if some of the edges dry. I don't really care about that, okay? So now we get the underside of the circle as well as the side of this the triangular shapes. Now the light in this example, it appears to come from the right in many ways, because you get the left section a little darker than the right section on this triangle I'm just now painting, but it's not as clear cut because you get a lot of light that's reflected from the environment. What I do love about this shape in the middle is that it's in some ways the easiest to read. It's a clear kind of star shape. It's a three-legged star instead of 5 legs. I don't know if legs is the right term, but you get what I'm saying. So I love that. And the middle is beveled outward, so you get this nice ridge that moves from the sides toward the center and meets there. And I really like that effect. So if you look at it, the light may seem really inconsistent. You get the top section of the left leg light, and then you get the bottom section of the right leg light. So I don't know exactly what to say about that, to be honest with you. All I know is that the answers are in front of you. The answers are right there in front of you. If you focus hard enough, you try and look for the patterns, you try to look for the shapes of light and shadow, you will find your answers. Okay, that's the most important part. The main challenge technique-wise is going to come in just a few moments with the background, because that's when you really have to pay attention to your edges and try not to have them dry on you. Okay, and again, you could do this with masking fluid or masking tape even. I didn't want to go through that stage. So instead, what I'm doing is starting top to bottom, a fairly wet wash, and all I care about right now is the outside of that circle. Okay, I'm not going to touch the inside yet because that's a separate area and I don't need another area to worry about the edges. So it's hard enough to split it to the right section and the left section, because right now I have to worry about the right section not drying and the left section not drying, and while I'm doing all of that, varying the wash, okay, varying it to, and by the way, I took my time. What you see again here is double speed, so you don't have to work fast. But what I am concerned with here is getting the values to be somewhat close to the reference photo, so that it does feel like good looking, and having smooth transitions. Now, why are the smooth transitions crucial here? Unlike many other paintings where you're not necessarily, it's not as important. Sorry if Ruth is going to bark. There's a motorcycle outside. But sometimes it's not a must. Here it's a must. Why? Because we're essentially painting all behind the logo. And what I want to make sure is that the logo still pops out. So the popping out will come, 1, from the difference in values, but 2, from the difference in the edges treatment. Because the edges of the logo are very harsh. It's the object that's in focus, and it has very sharp plane changes. So whenever the shape of the object changes abruptly, you get these sharp lines of light and shadow. The background is the metallic body of the car, and it's very blended and gradual transitions, and this is what will bring out the difference between the two. And it looks funny right now, I know, because the logo there is still white behind it, but as soon as I put in those areas, you'll see I'm just not taking the risk of opening them up before I finished with the areas around the circle. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Don't open up unnecessary fronts, battle fronts. You don't need that. First, finish with this shape we're working on right now. Notice I did some wet and wet just to get some of the darks there. This is really winging it. It's a risk. I took a risk, but I'm still happy with the result. Later on, you can come back and darken some details if you feel like you lost the sense of depth or the sense of clarity in the object. But this is one way of doing it that works. So I'm going to start here, switch to a smaller brush, working on that left section, trying to match the values I see outside the circle. That's really important for the feeling of continuity. Notice how, by the way, I approach this whole thing monochromatically. So I'm just using black. I believe it's White Knight's charcoal black, something like that. It's one of their only blacks they have in their line, White Knight St. Petersburg. And I'm mimicking the values outside. Now, you may mess it up. It's hard. It's a challenge to mimic the values outside. I'm also not doing fully perfect work with it, as you can see. but do it as much as you can. The reason I'm working on these two sides simultaneously is that I did want to make sure they match. So unlike the background, which would have been too hard to do in conjunction with these steps, this I can manage. Two smaller shapes, so I did work on them simultaneously. And I do think they mimic the background well. I think it does feel like the background's closed off into a whole shape, if that makes sense. So I do think it looks good right now. And you can still tell there's still a good distinction between the logo and the body of the car. Now, to bring it out a little more, and because it looks like that for me, at least to me and to my eyes in the reference, I just add in a couple of dark spots here and there. These will help. They're not a must, but I do feel like they'll make the logo pop a little more and also push the values to be a little more accurate. It's just small touches to get it to pop a little more. Now, in addition to those touches, some areas I'm touching right now actually do have these small thin stripes. These are actually reflections of something else in the environment. So you'll see soon I'm going to add some medium values. That's terrible. Sorry, I hope it doesn't come off in the mic too much. Sorry about that. But you can see some very strong stripes that run across the surface, the chromatic surface. So right now I'm drawing them quote unquote with my brush, and you see that's actually what they look like. It's different waves, and they follow the shape of that base of the logo. They literally follow it based on the curves. And then within them, you'll see some darker shapes, like the ones I'm putting right now. And it's fully abstract. It's very similar to my video with the swan, how to paint a swan, and how I treated the water ripples. You just get all of these beautiful wavy patterns of medium and dark values. And that's what gives it this sense of reflective surface. Same goes for this area. You see, it's just random abstract shapes. Not random. It's the way I see them in the reference photo, but they are abstract, okay? And that's how you get this beautiful chromatic, shiny, reflective surface effect, and by getting all of these small shapes in a detailed way. I hope that makes sense. This is the end of this process in just a few moments, and then we're gonna talk about it.
So here we are with the end result. I'm not gonna lie, I was very worried about the background wash, and going into it I knew that I'm taking quite a lot of risks by doing it this way. This is a classic painting for using masking fluid, but I decided not to. I decided to be a Puritan, watercolor Puritan in this one, and I'm happy I did. I wanted to show you how you can work your way around these shapes and negative paint around them and fill in the sections that are inside later on. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Now let's remove the tape. I already signed it. This one's going to be major, I think, the tape removal, because it's really going to show us the shapes. You know, when you have this kind of a packed, busy background, it really does improve its visual appeal when you remove the tape. So last one, here we go. I really hope you enjoyed this one. Now let's wrap it up face to face. So thank you so much for watching once again. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think of this video. A little bit of a different one, very detail oriented, a little slower on the applying the paint. No big washes really aside from the background, which was a risk, by the way, as I mentioned. It really got me worried, but I'm happy with how it turned out. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you enjoyed this one. I can do more of these. If you have any suggestions for specific references, I will definitely look into them. And if you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate a like and a comment down below. These things help. If you can share it with someone you know will find it helpful, it really helps the channel reach more people, and I'm super grateful because it has been reaching a lot of new people lately. So thank you so much. I will see you again in the next video.